Don't tell me that the moon is shining. Show me the glint of light on broken glass. Hello and welcome to Shining Moon, a speculative fiction podcast, episode 15. I'm your host, Deborah L. Davitt. Today we'll continue our series by asking what it takes to be a magazine editor in this day and age. We'll discover the process that takes hold of your story from the moment you click the submit button until the moment it's published, and we'll talk about the biggest challenges facing editors today. My guests this week are Stephen Granade and Cislyn Smith of Small Wonders. Stephen Granade is a writer, editor, and XYZZY-awarded game designer whose works have appeared in Escape Pod, Baffling Magazine, and the late lamented Sub-Q. They co-edit Small Wonders, a sci-fi fantasy magazine for flash fiction and poetry, and direct the science track for DragonCon, and organize the interactive fiction competition for 15 years. Hello, Stephen. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be back.
All right, we're going to turn to Cislyn. Cislyn Smith, co-editor of Small Wonders magazine, calls Madison, Wisconsin home. She's been known to crochet tentacles, write stories at odd hours, and commit wanton acts of poetry. Cislyn's poems and stories have appeared in Strange Horizons, Diabolical Plots, and Fantasy magazine. She spends time behind the scenes at the Dream Foundry, helping creators across the speculative arts connect with the resources and level up their craft. She is also the co-convention chair for Flights of Foundry. I don't know how she has the time to be on. Hello, Cislyn. Delighted to have you on.
Hi, it's good to be here. And it's true, I am tired. I'm very tired.
Understandably so.
That you both have a lot on your plate, so I really appreciate the time you're taking away from your various other things to talk with me today. I really, really appreciate it. All right, so we're going to start with the first question, which is, some magazines have on their website, like Apex does, they have their entire process mapped out in a clear way that's very transparent to submitters. And not everyone does that. What is the process like from the moment it's received to the moment it's published with you guys? And whichever one of you wants to take that, take it away.
Oh, well, I have thoughts on this because I help to design our back end.
I was going to say, you're the person who is, with consultation, responsible for making it happen. So definitely can speak the most authoritatively to it.
So a submission comes in and it goes into our submission system in Airtable. And the first thing it does is Airtable looks at the data and goes, is this good data? Right? Did you give me a valid submission? Have you submitted too soon? Have you submitted multiple times in this queue? Have you... et cetera, et cetera. And if it's bad, it goes, hey, by the way, here is an auto reject for the following reasons. And if it's good, then it gets marked new and it goes into a queue that's appropriate, like either poetry, original fiction, reprints, art.
Okay.
And then our first readers come along and read it. They're rating on a scale of, should it be in the magazine? Like, could they see it having a home in Small Wonders? And that goes from like, nope, maybe, yes, enthusiastic yes. And then a second reader comes along without being able to see what the first reader said. And
always important.
They also read it. They read it blind. They rate it nope, maybe, yes, or enthusiastic yes. The nopes are rejected. Nope maybes are rejected, maybe maybes are rejected, and everything else comes to us, basically. So we end up getting a whole lot of things on our desk, Stephen and I, that are either somebody felt really strongly about it, right? And there's a disagreement, or two people felt very strongly about it. And then we take a look and see if we agree or not. We read the notes. We either hold at that point, or we go, oh, we absolutely know we want this and we know when we want it for, and we go ahead and send an acceptance letter. Edits happen after that. if we've accepted. After edits, contract happens. We send the contract after edits so that we have an accurate word count. With Flash, I mean, a few words is, it's a thing. And then proofs go out in the last week of the month before the issue goes up. And payments go out that week too. And I think that's the entire process. Did I miss anything, Stephen?
No, that is an admirable summation of it.
I love this. This is very transparent, and I really appreciate the peek behind the curtain. I think you're the only ones using Airtable that I'm aware of, but I really like the system. Speaking as a submitter, and it's very comforting to have that immediate response back from the system saying, "Yes, it's there. We've got it. Don't worry about it." or "Whoops, you screwed up," which is also valuable information, which I need to take into account before submitting again.
Right.
What do you guys look for in your slush pile? I mean, if you've got somebody who's given you you've had your slush readers read, and one of them's given you a nope, and somebody's given you an enthusiastic yes on the same story, and this can't happen. Some stories are just polarizing like that, and that means that they're creating a response in the readers one way or the other. What do you look for out of these stories that have been sent to you by your slush readers? And I guess I'll pick out Stephen Granade now, because he hasn't had a chance to talk yet.
Absolutely. So, we have the pile of what goes into the needs decision bin, which is the Cislyn and I need to take a look at that. And we go through each and every one of them. Anyone that has been marked with an enthusiastic yes tends to catch our eye first, because that is a piece that someone felt very strongly about and wants to advocate for. But our typical approach, at least my typical approach, let me not speak for you, Cislyn, sorry. I go and I look, we ask the first readers to jot down their thoughts about why yes, no, maybe, enthusiastic yes. And so I sort of scan through that to see what was their headspace after they had read it. And then I go and I take a look and calibrate against those, because it's very rare, I think, for any one piece to have like two enthusiastic yeses or an enthusiastic yes and a yes, just because tastes are different.
Yes.
But I know for me, I'm looking for something that provokes a strong reaction. And that is not necessarily positive or negative. I just want to feel something after having read it. And sometimes that is admiration at the technical construction of it and the word choice and how it goes together. Sometimes that is oh my gosh, that really makes me feel a certain way. It has really provoked that kind of reaction within me. And I think that for me is the strongest thing that I'm looking for. When I get done, I'm like, does it stay with me for whatever reason that is, such that I really want to see that show up in the magazine?
And Cislyn, when the two of you are making decisions together, how does that work? Do you again have enthusiastic yes or in your own little pile?
We basically do. Very often we'll go through things together, but if time doesn't allow and our schedules don't permit, then we read separately and we leave our own notes, just like the readers do. And very frequently, I'll read something and I'll be like, wow, I loved this. I would be sad if someone other than us published it. And that's my version of an enthusiastic yes, right? Like, it's like, I would be very disappointed if Small Wonders didn't have this. I know somebody else is going to publish it, so I want to be the one to publish it. And that's kind of our base metric in a lot of ways is, would I be very disappointed if we let it go?
Okay.
And we don't really have a lot of disagreements. Sometimes it'll be one of us is on the fence about a piece. Like I'll say, well, this did make an impression. I'm not sure I like it, but it moved me. I could see us publishing it. I want to know what you think. Right? Like,
interesting.
Something like that. Or sometimes I'll be like, this is absolutely one of my favorites, but it's extremely close to a lot of the other things that we've published.
That is something I was going to ask.
Like 4 or 5 months out? How do we balance this out? And can we afford to have two things that are so thematically or etc. close? And so we look at those kind of issues when we're putting together things, because we do build the issues thematically and try to make them a whole and holistic. We don't want any one issue to be like the bummer month, for instance.
Yeah. Well, and
that is exactly one of the questions I was going to ask you, which is what happens if a story is just absolutely great? It's an enthusiastic yes from both of you, but it doesn't fit with the other stories in a coming issue. Does it just get bumped, or is it one that you have to just let go of regretfully?
With something like that, if we're both extremely enthusiastic yes about it, and it just doesn't fit with those stories, we're likely to bump it. Like, we can say, how about February? How about that? And we'll build the issue around it if we're that much in love with it.
Nice.
There have been a couple of times when we very painfully and regretfully had to say goodbye to a piece because it was just a little too close to something else we were publishing at all. And the things we publish can be extremely off the wall. You wouldn't think that, I don't want to use the exact example, but I don't know. You wouldn't think that snow globes with universes in them, to actually make up an example, this is not something from the slush pile. You wouldn't think snow globes with universes in them, that you'd have two stories like that you love with those elements. And yet there have been instances like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're definitely, you end up with runs where like stories and poems will not be the same, but they'll rhyme in terms of their theme. Like there's something in the gestalt that people are responding to, or just because there are enough submissions coming in, the law of small numbers means that it's sort of like the birthday problem where like you get, what is it, like 20, I think it's less than that, number of people in the room, and you'll have a really high probability that two of them will have the same birthday. The same kind of thing happens with stories and poems. And so, yeah, we'll have to say, well, this is really good. Absent the other ones, I would love to publish it. But just as you don't want to be Mermaids Monthly necessarily, unless you are going to be Mermaids Monthly.
Yes.
And just like you don't want to be like the All Bummer All the Time magazine, unless that is your specific thing.
That's your niche, yeah.
Yeah, since neither of those are our niche, we have to say, all right, that's too much of the same thing or close enough to the same-ish thing that are rhyming. We're going to have to let this one piece go.
All right, that brings up a different question. Since you are a relatively new magazine and people may not have encountered you yet, what is the Small Wonders niche? What is the Venn diagram that describes you?
Oh, damn. Voicey and big feels. And strong on story, I'd say.
Yeah. Big feels, small package.
You spun everything.
Well, we are looking for things that move you. And that can come in that can look like a bunch of different things. But we are big on prose and word choice, which is, I think, should be expected given that we're talking flash fiction where you have very few words, and poetry where like every single word and its placement matters.
Yes.
We have to care about the prose and the word choice. And we really want it to stay with you. We want you to be done and be like, oh gosh, like that is something that's I'm going to carry with me for a while.
All right. Those are eminently wonderful things, and I hope that you see lots of voicey pieces coming in. What inspired you to start a magazine in this day and age when magazines are just having such a hard time anyways? What was the culminating factor in, gosh darn it, we want to have a magazine of our own?
Beyond foolish optimism?
Foolish optimism played a very large part, to be honest.
I mean, this is all Cislyn. Cislyn was the driving force behind this, so I definitely feel like you should take this and lay out its genesis.
So I've wanted to open a magazine for years now, years and years, but I also very much know my own limitations, and I knew that I wanted it to be a joint effort.
Okay.
I love collaborative projects, and I very much believe that when you have a big project, you should have redundancy in its leadership so that if somebody has a problem, then somebody else can step up for a while, etc. And so finding the right time, the right circumstance, and the right collaborator was all playing a part. And then DSF died.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And I looked at the way that DSF went away, and I looked at the market, and I said, I love flash fiction. I want there to be more dedicated markets to this. And the thing about being an editor is that you can just do it. Now, people have to trust you with their stories. You have to earn that by doing well with them. But you can just do it. And so I said, all right, I've wanted to do this for years. I approached Stephen, and we made it happen.
There's definitely multiple points where like, no one's telling us no. No one's stopping us. There is no giant anvil from the universe dropping on our head. I guess we're doing this.
Yeah.
That's sort of like my feeling about starting a podcast, is that I was really expecting people to tell me no, and no one did. Matter of fact, people were enthusiastic, and I was sort of sitting there going, okay, then I guess I'm doing this.
It's weird. It's kind of like starting a convention.
Yes.
Yeah. You can just do that. I don't recommend it unless you really want to do it, in which case I recommend it, and I have resources that can help you.
She does. She really does.
I do. I really do.
I don't suppose that this is really hitting you guys because you have small windows that you're open and you are a relatively new market, but have you been hit by any AI written submissions yet? And has that been a problem for you?
Yeah, not really.
We got maybe one submission in the last window that I looked at and went, I think maybe a machine wrote this because of the particular word choices. They do not seem to go together the way that words do, but maybe somebody was just being Dadaist. It wasn't good, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Or perhaps fortunately, but we haven't really been hit by that wave of spam. We don't look like a good money-making opportunity. Surprise.
Yeah, we have.
Well, that's a good. In some ways, this is a good thing. It doesn't put that burden on you to be constantly looking for this and having to send it out, which is
It is a weird sort of badge of success for venues like Clark's World, where that is happening, in part because they are established, they are known, they are open for extended periods of time. So. People looking to suggest quote unquote money making approaches to using AI can say, oh, here, just, upend the bucket of slop into this chute and maybe some money will come out the other side. And we are new, relatively unknown, and not continuously open, all of which sort of contributes to that not being a good source for someone producing YouTube videos claiming to explain how you're going to make a lot of money with AI.
Yeah.
There's also the advantage that we're looking for poetry, which people are not apparently using AI to generate. Thank goodness, not yet. And flash fiction, which Flash pays, it's only 1,000 words. So you're only going to make so much money off of it, period. So it's really not looking as profitable, I think, to people who are spamming.
Yeah. So you've contained and controlled exactly what you want to see. You've defined your market, and how are people responding? Do you have any idea of if you're reaching your intended readers? Do you have I hate the word metrics with a passion, but do you have any idea that you're reaching people? Because a lot of times as a writer, you feel like you're sending things out into a howling void even after it's been published. And then occasionally you get a fan mail and you go, oh my God, somebody read this. My life is complete.
I will say one of my markers of, oh, this is really cool, was having an author respond to someone who, still on Twitter, had tweeted out, like, this story stayed with me. And the author saying, this is the first time I've ever heard anybody say anything about any of my short fiction. One of the things, especially as a newer venue, I think that we've been cognizant of is, like, we've got to do what we can to get the word out. And in these days of sadly fractured social media landscapes, there's a whole lot of, like, toss it into this bucket and toss it in this other bucket and toss it in this third bucket. But across all the buckets that we're tossing it into, I see people like reposting it and discussing it or saying, oh, dang, this was really great. So
that's beautiful.
I can't say, like, I don't know what our ideal reader is. I think my ideal reader is someone who will read the thing. But I am seeing some signs of life.
That is excellent. Cislyn, do you have the same sort of feeling going that there's discussion, there's conversation?
I definitely get that feeling. There could always be more. Like, I mean, it's the perennial thing, right? If you see something and you like it, or it evoked emotions, for goodness sake, talk about it, right? Like, and talk about it in public, because then other people go, oh, I should read that thing. We do see responses to these things, and it does make me extremely happy when people connect with the stories and poems. It's like, yes, did the thing. We don't at the moment have other metrics. I don't have the same aversion to the word as you do for whether we're
I came up
things.
through large corporations, so metrics were almost constantly discussed. Okay. So I don't want to apply this word, but I have no other way to. I have no other term. Yes, that.
Yeah,
yes.
No. I think of it more just in terms of, like, are we doing what we want to do, and is it getting out to the people that we want it to get out to? And if it's connecting with anyone, that's a good start. And this whole year is going to be, are we having a good start, right? Because we are just starting out. It is our first year, and it's difficult to find audience in this fractured landscape, as mentioned.
Yeah.
And, we're giving it a shot. We'll see how it goes. But I definitely feel like
say that
people are liking it.
As a submitter, you are on my bucket list of venues that I want to get into. So because you guys have created such a fun and really viable place, and I would love to get in. So I will continue to submit in any window that you happen to have openings.
Well, thank you.
Well, that makes me very happy. Thank you.
Yeah.
We want to treat the writers right.
So far, you are doing a wonderful job with that. I've seen nothing but good feedback from the community, and that is, keep it up. You guys are wonderful and transparent and very open, and it's been a wonderful experience so far. Even in the rejection side of things, there have been wonderful rejections. So, thank you.
Oh, good. I'm pleased to hear that. We wrote those form letters with care. It's true. But...
Well, there is an art to the form letter, because you have to let somebody down gently, but not overwhelm them with an entire page worth of all the reasons why they shouldn't give up, and so on and so forth. There's an art to it. So you guys have definitely nailed that. What is the greatest joy that you get out of being an editor? I'm going to start with the joy first, then I'm going to go to the difficulties. So, what's your favorite thing about being an editor?
Cislyn is pointing at me. Well, I will tell you, because as we have gotten started, we're now working a little bit ahead. I'm not going to say we're super ahead, but we are at least not putting things together entirely at the last minute. But what that means is that we have potentially read the stories and poems and then accepted them and then edited them. And then it can be a month or two before it shows up in my inbox or on the website. And I'll go, oh, yeah, that one. And I go back and it looks like, oh, this is still really good. And there is a delight for me in rediscovering the things that we had looked at and talked about, because I think there is a fair amount of dispassionate approach that I need to take when assembling it. There is that sort of initial rush of like, oh, this is super good, I want to publish it. But then there is all of the mechanics around that where I sort of put that to the side and say, okay, what do we do about editing it? What do we do about getting it on the website? And then the treadmill continues and I must continue running. So it has to pass in my rearview mirror until it shows up in my inbox and reminds me why I was excited about it in the first place. And I find that endlessly wonderful.
Wonderful. Okay. Cislyn, how about you?
See, I have trouble picking favorites. Like, you asked me what my biggest joy is, and I come up with like 3 things, and now I have to choose between them. So I really, really love finding a thing that I love in the slush. Like when the readers have read it and like it's got 2 enthusiastic guesses or even 1, and I read it and I go, heck yeah. Right? That is amazing to me. Like the thrill of discovery, as it were, right? I adore that. I also really, really like seeing the slush readers get invested in the pieces. Like, because we get to read their notes, and especially because a lot of our readers, we're introducing them to poetry. We've taught them how to read poetry. We've taught them what we're looking for in narrative poetry and speculative poetry. And now they're approaching poetry and going, oh, this is really good. And I really like seeing that moment of connection for them, where they're going, wow, this is next level. This is amazing, specifically with poetry, because they're already connecting a lot with the flash fiction. They already knew that form. They knew what they liked. They knew what they were doing going in. And so seeing that learning step happen and seeing them then want to advocate for poetry too, like really, that's a really cool joy for me. And I also really, really love seeing people react to the things that we've published after the fact, like going, oh, hey, I read this from last month's issue and it still stuck with me. And I'm like, score. Okay, yes. Right? Like that's really cool. So there's my 3 favorite things.
Well, the responses can like what story or poem people are really going to respond to varies by person. Like we saw this all the way back in the issue 0 that we put together for our Kickstarter, where we went and we solicited writers and poets that we really liked so that we could go into the Kickstarter and say, this is our vision. These are the kinds of works that we want to publish. And hearing people talk about which ones of those they thought were quote unquote best or most responded to, there were advocates for all pieces throughout that issue 0.
Good.
And that was really neat. And it was a little unexpected, honestly. Like, it was cool, but I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to flip the switch here and we're going to ask about what's the single biggest issue facing you as an editor that makes it hard to operate a magazine? Because we have to talk about the bad as well as the good.
Sure.
And time in the day, I don't know. What is your biggest issue? And I'm going to point at Cislyn first.
Business stuff.
Yeah.
Dealing with taxes and business forms and state stuff and keeping track of all of the little fiddly, you are actually running a business, which does thrill me, but keeping track of all the little fiddly things that have to happen for the business to be on the up and up. I really don't like all of that stuff. Like I'm learning it and I'm figuring it out, but it is a little more challenging than I expected it to be, and it is a drag. It's boring and it's frustrating, and a lot of the time I'm going, but why? I really like sending money to authors, and the contracts are fine. We've got a really good system for that, et cetera, et cetera. But the actual businessy stuff, ugh, no thanks.
And Stephen, same answer for you or a different answer for you?
Related answer, because in divvying up some of the responsibilities, one of the things that I took on was the infrastructure. How do you have a website? How do you put stories and poems and endless poetry formatting up? How? Dang, poets!
Speaking for poets, I apologize on our behalf. But...
No, I love it, but it has definitely been a headache in terms of making sure that we get it right, because we want to do right by the poems. How do you create ebooks? How do you sell ebooks and make them available? Because it turns out there is no turnkey solution for any of this unless you are very large and have a whole lot of money to spend with a business. Instead, it is, well, take these 4 or 5 different things, none of which are quite the right fit, and duct tape them together. And so there's
and cross your fingers.
And then cross your fingers. And when it fails, to pick an example at random, it doesn't send out your ebook to your subscribers across all of the subscriptions, which is something, of course, that would never happen. But if it would, what a pain that would have been, hypothetically speaking.
That sounds hypothetically very frustrating.
It was a hypothetically very stressful morning. But it's fixed. Everything's fine. There's no problems here. The wings are not on fire.
That is right. There is no gremlin out your window.
That's right.
And it was both heartening and disheartening. We talked to a number of different magazine editors as we were getting this started. And they were incredibly generous with their time. Dave Ring, Neil Clark. So, for example, talking with Neil, we're like, we're having trouble finding XYZ to host and publish these ebooks and sell them and do all this. Like, oh yeah, none of that exists. You have to invent it. Like, oh, I guess I'm glad I didn't miss something obvious, but dang, I wish I had missed something obvious.
Oh yeah. So in terms of ebooks, how would I go about getting an ebook of your magazine? I'm sure you're glad I asked that.
I'm very glad.
Very, very.
So you can go to store.smallwondersmag.com, and that has all of our issues available. We are also now on waitlist books, so you can get individual issues there. At both of those locations, you can sign up for a subscription, which, monthly or yearly will get you the ebooks as they come out with each month.
Are they available in PDF or are they solely in EPUB?
Yes to all of that. PDF, EPUB, and Mobi. And
yes,
nice.
We do all the things, and we have regrets about that choice, but we are sticking with it.
we are committed to that, and it will send it to your Kindle. Like, we can do that as well.
Okay, awesome. All right, let's see. Do I have any other questions that I have previously written down? Nope, I have no other questions, but we can totally continue to chat if you like. What would you like to talk about in terms of your magazine? What are some of the highs and lows of the past year as you've been going through, and you're going to be looking back at 2023 and going, this was the best moment, and we can talk about that to exclude the worst moments, because apparently they were all hypothetical anyway. So
correct.
I think both best and worst came during the Kickstarter. Honestly, for me, a Kickstarter is kind of an anxiety generation machine on purpose. And it turns out that having anxiety and running an anxiety generation machine makes you anxious. Gosh. So that was a really stressful month, especially because we didn't fund until like the very end, which again, I know this. I've run Kickstarters before. I knew this would happen. I had the whole thing planned out. I'm like, we're probably going to fund in the last week. It's either going to fund in the first week or the last week. This is how it works. I understand this. All the same, I was going crazy. It was not pretty. But when we funded, amazing.
Yeah, there was that point about halfway through where Cislyn and I are talking. It's like, well, we gave it a good try, as if we were done, as if we had to give up right then.
We were like, well, what are our lessons learned?
Right. What would we have done differently? Let's start pre-morteming this.
God, we were so sad. We were so sad.
I can completely imagine this because I would be looking at, I've watched Kickstarters from a distance. They terrify me. There's something that I may need to do for my RPG at some point in the future. I don't want to do it because I do have anxiety and I think I would stress out enormously about this, but I've watched them and they either fund in the first hour or they take until the very last minute and then they overfund. And there's no in between.
No, there's really not. Well, there are a few instances every once in a while where something will fund in the second week maybe and then go on to do spectacular overfunding. But like those are extremely rare cases. And I knew we probably weren't going to do that, but a girl could dream.
Yep. Well, and we had a lot of tailwinds. Which are the good ones? The good wins. We had the good wins.
We had good wins.
Like Kickstarter featured us as a project that they loved, which was completely unexpected. I want to shout out Will Sobel, who was at the same time doing doing the Kickstarters through Apex Publications for their Robotic Ambitions. Will has a long experience in the magazine and RPG space of this and was a booster of the project and also a good confidant. Like I went to Will at that halfway point. I was like, so we're done, right? And Will's like, they're there. You're doing so well. You didn't have a group of previous subscribers that you could talk to. Like you're starting from zero. You had no mailing list. You had nothing. You're doing really well. And that was what we needed to hear.
Yeah.
Do you guys plan to do another one?
Oh, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, but...
Well, we've talked about it, and it's basically, we have a 3-year plan. And we're checking in each year at multiple points during each year. And we've already checked in for this year, looking ahead to next and gone, so the plan is still Kickstarter, right? And the answer is, unfortunately, yes. Kickstarter is a really good way to build awareness of a magazine, which sucks. I hate that. But it gets the word out to people.
Yes, it does.
And it's a really uniquely good platform at getting the word out to people. So we're going to be kickstarting next year. And probably for year 3, but hopefully not beyond that. I'm hoping that we'll be at a more stable place after that. We'll see. But I'm hoping that the absolute paranoid anxiety stress that came from year 1 will not be present in year 2. I guess we'll see. But I also won't be preparing to run a convention at the same time as the Kickstarter's happening. So that'll be a help.
That sounds wise.
It was a little bit much this year, but Flights of Foundry is happening in September of next year, so it's okay. There's a little more separation there, which means that I can breathe slightly more. So we will be kickstarting again. I hope that people will still be as excited now that we've got a track record, or will have a track record at that point, much more of one. It sucks. The more people who subscribe now, the fewer people we need to pledge to the Kickstarter. Just going to lay that out there. If you'd like me to have fewer nightmares, and you would like that for the record, then subscribe now.
Would you like to talk a little bit about Flights of Foundry so long as I have you on?
Oh, I mean, I'm always happy to talk about Flights of Foundry and Dream Foundry. Although, if I could talk about Connor Best for just a minute. Sure. We have a fundraiser happening, like literally right now. So Connor Bust is a program that gives cash grants to fans and creatives of color to help connect them with networking resources, workshops, send them to conventions, pay for hotels and flights and travel and all that kind of good stuff. It's a program that predates the Dream Foundry. The Dream Foundry came in and helped pick them up when they were having some problems during the pandemic, and we'd like to keep it running. And there's a sweepstakes happening right now. You can support Connor Bust and help directly fund cash grants for fans and creatives of color, while also getting a chance to win a PS5 or any number of other bookish prizes like gift certificates to cool bookshops or Libra FM Audible bundles and stuff like that. So
is there a website affiliated with this? Is it just connorbust.com or something like that?
The website for the fundraiser is go.rallyup.com/ConnorBust. Yes,
okay,
I
will have
that
to
too many times.
I will be referring to this timestamp when I'm creating the video. All right. And so about Flights of Foundry. Talk to me about that and Dream Foundry.
Flights of Foundry is Dream Foundry's biggest fundraiser. You might notice a theme. Dream Foundry is a nonprofit, so we're always asking for money. But we don't charge for entry to any of our programs, including Flights of Foundry, which is an international virtual online convention which runs 24 hours around a 3 to 4 day period. We run 24 hours so that we don't privilege any one time zone or part of the world over others. And we have presentations, workshops, panels, and all the good stuff that you would expect from a convention. And it's awesome. We always have at least between 4 and 7 guests of honor from different parts of the industry. Editing, games, prose, translation, you name it. We're all over the place. We love our guests of honor. And it's always free to attend. So yeah, be looking for that next September.
All right. Stephen, is there anything you'd like to talk about that we haven't covered?
No, I'd like to, speaking personally, keep focus on the magazine just because it is new and it is such a tiny baby, and I wanted to grow up to be a toddler wandering around and pulling things off of shelves and putting everything in its mouth.
What does small wonders gnaw on?
Yeah, so that is a really good, it feels like it would have to be some sort of magical bubble where you're like, no, do not open the portal.
Well, I have no further questions, and if you guys wouldn't mind, I will just be thanking you for having been on the podcast. I really appreciate you having taken the time to talk with me about your baby, which I hope will be a toddler and for someday even a teenager with its hair down in its eyes, looking at you saying, why did you bring me into this world? It's only pain. It's only pain.
Right.
It'll write some really good poems about that.
Yes.
It will, yes. Next week on Shining Moon, we'll be talking with writers of military science fiction and military fantasy stories, including Jonathan Brazee, P.A. Cornell, Derek Bowden, and Dave Steer. See you all then. Thank you very much, and we are out.